Welcome, my constant reader friends. I'm Tad, and this is Tad Reads Books and Stuff. All right, so this is kind of part two. My last video I did yesterday was my TBR for spooky season, and this is just the wrap-up, my normal weekly reading update for the end of September, the end of Sci-Fi September. So I got a couple things done, so we're just going to jump right into it. I did finish the next short story in the Expanse series, and it's Gods of Risk. Now, they're calling this Expanse 2.5, so really this short story takes place after Book 2, Caliban's War, and between Book 3, Abaddon's Gate, which I just did the review for last week. Now, the best thing about this story is Bobby Draper's in it. So it saves my Expanse reading experience, because I really, if you watch my video, I didn't love Abaddon's Gate. Out of the first 3 novels in this series, it's the weakest one, in my opinion. One of the reasons is because it didn't have my favorite characters in it, and it introduced some characters that I really didn't like. But this one has Bobby Draper in it. Now, let's get the numbers out of the way real quick. This was published in September of 2012. There's 72 pages in this short story, and on Goodreads it's a 3.72, which isn't great, but fair to middling, you know. What did I think of it? Well, I liked it. Like I said, I think it saved my Expanse experience for this month. Some people don't like it. There's mixed feelings, which I really actually like. If I start researching, books or stories, and I see, people are all over the place with it, I kind of like it. Just a short thing. I used to be a singer in a rock band back in my younger days, and I used to ask people at the end of every show, hey, what was your favorite song that we did? And what I was looking for was a mixture. Because if I got a mixture, then I knew, some people like this, some people like that, some people don't like this. But if everybody said the same song, then I'd be like, oh shit. I mean, we do one great and we do the other one's crappy. So I do appreciate when I see varying reviews of stories. But this one I really liked. What is it? It really is a story about the 16-year-old kid. His name's David Draper. He's Bobby Draper's nephew. At this point, Bobby is actually living with him and his family on Mars. Now, he's in school, and his parents are really, really serious. I mean, they really need him to get good grades so that he can progress and he can get a placement in the position. It's kind of like college, but it's going to, what's going to be your job, what's going to be your future. And if the better the placement, the higher the placement, of course, the better your job, the better your future is. So they're really buckling down on him, his parents, and he's kind of putting a lot of pressure on himself too. But he's kind of a loner, so he kind of falls in with the wrong crowd. And he gets hooked up with this dude named Hutch, and Hutch is basically a drug dealer. And because David is a chemist, he starts cooking for him, and he's cooking drug. It's kind of like this world's methamphetamine. So he's cooking these drugs for this dude Hutch, and he's a dealer. He's got other people involved and stuff. One of the girls that is kind of with Hutch, but he's she's kind of a latcher on. Not the coolest person in the world, but of course she's cute, and David is in love with her. So she gets in trouble. She asks David for help. David thinks he's got to help her, even to the detriment of his schooling. So he's trying to balance all these things. There's also terrorist attacks happening on Mars. Bobby, living with his family, is causing some inner turmoil with that, because she constantly is arguing with David's father, her brother. which creates some tension in the household. So this dude's life is really kind of going crazy right now, and he's not making the best of decisions all around. I mean, not only just cooking, but you know, this chick Lily that he's interested in, who's no good either. But anyways, she gets in trouble with Hutch, and now David's got to try to save her. Eventually, he gets to the point where he kind of has to ask Bobby for some help getting over there. She kind of senses that something's wrong. She, and in the end, helps David. I don't know. I like the story. It does, for me, fill in some gaps. If you watch the TV series, which I actually enjoyed, again, the TV series to me was up and down. This story, similarly, is in the series, the TV series. So I enjoyed that. I like the story. I don't know what else to say about it. Read it. If you read the Expanse series, I have seen people say, you don't need to read these novellas, short stories, or whatever. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you continue to read these? Some are better than others. For me, out of the first three, this is my favorite so far. But I don't know. I mean, if I'm enjoying the series so far, even though Abaddon's Gate wasn't the best for me. But all right, so that's that. Let's move on from this now and get into what we're really here to talk about, and that is Ursula K. Le Guin's The Three Hainsh Novels. All right, so we're going to start with the first book in the trilogy. There's 3 books in here. They're the first 3 books written in this Hainish world that Ursula has created. Now, we're going to... It's hard for me to just go through each individual book. I'm going to try to do that on a high level real quick, and then we're going to talk about the whole trilogy as a whole, because I really think that's how it should be read. It should be just one book now. They should just print it as one book. But this one is the first novel that Ursula published. She had some, short stories and things, articles she had written, published before, but this is her actual first novel. Now, it's Rocannon's War. Let's do the numbers real quick. It was published in 1966. This version here, there's 112 pages. On Goodreads, there's a 3.77 rating. Another, it's okay. Not quite 4, but, close. So what is this first book in the Hainish series? Well, first off, it starts out trying to establish itself as a science fiction, I think, novel, because she had written some other things that were not accepted, were turned down before, that really weren't science fiction. I think she saw, and there's some writings, there's a lot of interviews with her, where she saw that there was, at this point in time, maybe some money to be had in science fiction realm. And so there's a little section here. It says Galactic Area 8, number 62, Formahalt 2. Formahalt 2 is the name of the planet. High intelligent life forms, species contacted. Species 1, and then it names the first species. On this planet, there are 3 different types of intelligent life forms that they know of. There may be something else. But the first one is called the Gdeniar. The Deniar starts with a G, Gdeniar. And they live in caves and very reminiscent of dwarves in fantasy books. Another race are the Fila, and they're very reminiscent of elves. Then there's the Levar, and they are kind of human warrior type intelligent life forms. bipedal, kind of, look like we do, like humans. And so our race, the Earth, humans, have discovered this planet. We're in the future time where we are expanding into the universe and finding other intelligent life forms inhabited on other planets. So what we're doing is we're going around and trying to get them, do first contact, of course, things like that, but to get them to join into this gestalt of worlds. It's called the League of All Worlds, because there's another intelligent life form from another planetary system that are our enemies. And we're trying to establish strength in the universe. Whoever, so there's a huge war going on between different planets. This is one of the planets that we have discovered, and we have made our presence known a little bit. They call us the Overlords. But the other bad people that we're fighting are coming to that planet too. They're going to try to influence them, take it over. That's what the story is about. It starts off with a prologue called The Necklace, and it's a hunt for this necklace that is going to bring fortune to one of these three races, the humans, the Livar, that are kind of gradually declining. The last reported place where this necklace was known to be was with the Denier, who are the dwarves. Anyways, they go, they find it, but the dwarves had given it to the overlords, so the girl kind of goes through a time warp, spatial warping thing, ends up on a ship, one of the overlord ships, the Earther ships, and they have the necklace. They say, oh, we don't need it. They give it to her. It's kind of convoluted. Then so the guy that she gets it from is this scientist, and his name's Rocannon. If it sounds like I'm going all over the place, that's what happens in the story. In 112 pages, it's really not focused. He goes back to the planet, but now time has changed. The original woman that went and got the necklace is dead, but now her daughter's in charge. Then he goes searching for some other people because they're still declining. Yeah, does it sound like I'm confused? It's very confusing. The plot, there's no real plot. There's no real character development. There's no world building. They fly around on these flying tigers to get around. The science isn't there. It's all over the place. It's kind of ridiculous. It definitely is not a science fiction novel. It's fantasy. It's dwarves, elves, and humans. And it ends ridiculously. It's not good. I gave it a 2. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. We're going to move on to the next book, and we'll go from there. The second novel is Planet of Exile. This one also was published later in 1966. This one only has, in this my version, only has 100 pages. And again, it got a Goodreads rating of 3.71, a little bit less than the first novel. Starting reading it to me, much better. There was a story in here that really wasn't in Rocannon's world. They mentioned Rocannon. They ended up, naming the world after Rocannon, the Earth scientists. So they do mention Rocannon's world in this novel. So there's a tiny tie-in that puts these in the same universe, the Hanish universe. So on this planet's called Werrell, Werel. And here we are again. There's Earthers. They've landed on this planet that they found that has intelligent life forms. They call them HILFs, H-I-L-F, higher intelligent life forms. And it's very reminiscent of Star Trek or something like that, where you've got a prime directive, first contact type of rules that you have to live by. So they can't really, these intelligent life forms that are on this planet know they're there, and they revere them as almost like gods. But they have their prime directive. They can't really influence the progression of these life forms. Again, bipedal, humanoid, like us. They do have sex between the different races. So similar to that, but they can't have children with each other. There's a problem with the chromosomes and the DNA, and so unfortunately the ship that brought the Earthers has to leave suddenly because they have to go to that war with the enemy. This other group that's trying to take over the universe, the entire universe. So they're stranded there. And over the years, they just start to die out. There's suicide, there's stillbirths. They can't, for whatever reason, because of the world, they can't get sick. They don't die. They can be killed physically, but they just don't die on their own. But they're really having troubles having children, and they're starting to decline. Now, these higher intelligent life forms are very primitive people. They're intelligent, they have language, they speak, but very similar. I think she has talked about in other interviews about using Norse mythology and Native American mythology, very anthropology. She's really into this, and it really shines through on here. It's very similar to, foreigners, Americans coming and taking over the lands, the native lands of the Native Americans and things like that. Very similar to that. They're very primitive people. Even after years and years, they still don't even have wheels. They haven't progressed to the point where they have carts with wheels on them even. And so anyways, in this world, their year is 60 of our years. And they have 4 distinct seasons. So each season is 15 years long. And we're coming up on winter. Winter's coming. They're so primitive that they just have to really bust their asses to get stores of food and protection. And they just hunker down for 15 years during the winter and pretty much do nothing. And winter's coming. What else is coming? Well, there's another tribe of primitive people who are coming to take over the lands of the people around this settlement of the Earthers, what they call Farborns. What they call the Farborns, they call us on this planet. And these group of bad people have found out, they've advanced enough that they realize that if they band together, instead of having different tribes all over the place that fight intermittently between themselves, if they band together, they're going to be strong enough to move down south before winter comes and take over all these other primitive areas. Now, the Earthers try to go to the local primitive people and get them to band together with the other natives around the area, so that when these bad people come through, they have enough force to fight and protect their homes and their lands. But of course, they can't do that. The problem is one of the Earthers, his name is Agate Altera. He meets up with one of these primitive girls. Her name is Rollery. She's the daughter of the chief of the people that he's trying to convince to band together. And they start a love affair. So, of course, the people try to kill him because he's now having sex with, one of theirs. So all the negotiations fall through and they don't band together. The bad people come through. They clean right through. They can't really hurt the Earthers because they're in, like a castle. They've got walls and bricks and running water and light, electricity and things like that in their keep. So these bad guys come through and they just run right through and they pretty much slaughter everybody, kill everybody. Agate goes and he does rescue Rollery and a couple of people, her father and a couple of people, and bring them into their keep. So now they're starting to see the differences that they really were kind of kept away from because they didn't want to influence them, the prime directive. And now these bad people turn on the keep and attack the keep. And basically that's what it is. It starts to decline. I could see how the advancement in her writing had progressed and the writing was better. The storytelling was better. Some more character development, but still not a lot. In 100 pages, there's not a lot to tell. And then after all this fighting and, battle and trying to stay alive, and it starts snowing. So winter's there and the book ends in 2 pages. I mean, I don't want to give it away, but the book ends in 2 pages. It's done and they survive. I'm going along. I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to give this a 3. I gave the first book a 2. I'm going to give this one a 3 just because the writing is better and there's a little bit more of a story and a plot in here. And then boom, it ends in 2 pages. And I was like, what the heck? Ended up giving it a 2-star. Oh my gosh, it was ridiculous. Now, again, I think we need to take this as a trilogy, as a one book as a whole. We're going to talk about that because now we're going to go into the 3rd novel in the Three Hainsh Novels. So, book 3 is City of Illusions. This one was published in 1967, 1 year later after the first 2. And it's a more substantial book. In this volume, 157 pages. On Goodreads, it got a 3.9. Almost got a 4 there. So, we're progressing. Again, I start reading this, and you can see leaps and bounds how Ursula K. Lequin has elevated her writing. Not only her prose style, but, the plot, character development, world building, everything involved in writing, she is doing much better. This now is the 3rd novel. What is this novel? So this starts out with a stranger stumbling out of the forest, almost dead, and he has no memory. He doesn't know his name. He can't really even talk. But he seems to be like 30-ish. But there's something strange about him. He has golden yellow eyes. These are not any type of eyes these people on this planet have ever seen. They know immediately that he is from another planet or another world. He is an alien. Now, it's you're led to believe, and I don't know how reliable this is in the story, but we're led to believe that this is actually Earth. So now we're thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the future, even from the first novel, Rocannon's world. We've gone back now to Earth. It's like, it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic world. People now are very cliquey. I mean, even more cliquey than we are nowadays, where they've just gathered together in small groups, small communities, because they are being ruled, I guess, by these evil overlords. People from another solar system that came and took over Earth. They call him the Shing. So this dude can't remember anything, doesn't know anything, but he stumbles into this town, this like little community of people, small community, and they take him in. They debate, should they kill him or should they, teach him, let him grow up in their community. Maybe he can be a boon to their society if they give him a chance. And there's some touch and go there. It's like raising a new puppy. But they teach him. He learns how to speak their languages. He learns how to speak other languages. He learns mathematics. He learns all kinds of things. Learns how to walk again. They give him a name. His name is Falk. He falls in love with the daughter of the leader of this community. And, but it eventually gets to the time where the leader of the community kind of says, you know what, Falk, I think it's time for you to leave. He sees the thing going on with him and his daughter, and I don't think he likes it. They don't really, they don't beat this guy up or harm him. Even her brothers, kind of are leery of him, but they accept him as a brother. But finally they say, you know what? You need to leave. You need to go find yourself. What is the meaning of your life? So this becomes a road novel. He leaves. He doesn't want to, but he does. He says goodbye to his love and says, I'll come back someday. And he goes on this road trip to try to find his story. He does know, though, that he has to go to the Shing. The main town of the Shing is west. So it's a long, arduous travel on foot most of the time, but then he gets a skiff, a little electronic thing that floats, hovers. He gets to use that. He gets a boat eventually. He meets up with people. People try to kill him. People try to help him. It's a road novel. It was a love story too. It was a love story, kind of like the last one at the beginning, but then he's on his own, but then he meets another girl. Again, not a tight plot, not a tight story. But this one is even more closely related to the last story because he came from Werel, W-E-R-E-L. And I don't know if this is a spoiler, but he is of a mixed breed between the overlords over there, Earthers, and those primitive peoples. So he's now on Earth. He's got to find himself. Arduous journey, all that. Not a bad novel. He does end up going to meet the Shing. One of the things that is a storyline that goes through all three of these novels is the ability to use your mind to communicate with each other. And that becomes a big part in this story as we continue on in this story. But again, not great. I'm doing, again, a high overview because I want to talk about this novel as a whole. So we finished this novel, and now we're kind of solidly entrenched in what she's trying to do here with these Hainish stories, this universe really that she's built. She does do a lot of articles and interviews talking about the Hainish novels, and really what she's talking about is it's like the haves and the have-nots. It's total cultural anthropology, and that was her big thing, was anthropology. She has used these stories to discuss that. So in sci-fi, of course, for me anyways, a lot of sci-fi is this exploration of current times. How do I tell a story that informs us on what's actually happening now? And this is very, very clear in these books, I feel, of the time that she wrote this, 1966, mid-60s, 66, 67. And so her characters are racially different. There's black people with light hair. There's black people with dark hair. There's light people with blonde hair. There's blue-eyed people, golden-eyed people, brown-eyed people. There's the dwarves, the elves, the humans. There's very militaristic people. There's people that are agriculture and farmers. It's this whole anthropological exploration, and who's better than who? How do we treat people? She uses that through, of course, the Prime Directive. Do we influence people or do we own them? Are we the overlords? Are they the overlords? You know, how do you come together as a people to succeed? That's a very thick vein that runs through these three books. I think it's interesting. So, even though I gave the first book a 2, the second book a 2 rating, and the third book a 3 finally, overall, it's a very interesting experiment here that she's doing. And I think it's worth it. Now, The Left Hand of Darkness, she wins the Hugo and the Nebula Award for this novel. First woman to ever do that. If you've read this novel, and I've seen a lot of people talk about this as their favorite, sci-fi novel ever written. I haven't read it yet. I will read it. But there's several cool things I'm saying about these books into this book. You definitely see the progression of her writing, which is very interesting to me. You definitely see that there's more going on here than these really poorly plotted, poorly characterized stories. But it's a progression into apparently what this is. This, again, is supposedly one of the best science fiction novels ever written. I haven't read it yet. I will eventually. So, if you are an Ursula K. Lequin fan, you haven't read these, but you have read The Left Hand of Darkness, or some of her other stories, and you're a big fan, yeah, you got to kind of read it. Again, individually, they're not great, but as a whole, they actually give me something to think about. And I think that it would do you good to read them just to inform the whole thing. I'm really now really interested in reading The Left Hand of Darkness just to see where she goes from here, because it is very interesting. So overall, I would give this a 3. Now, if you're a completionist like me and you get to where you got to read everything by a certain author, then of course you probably either read these or you really need to if you're a completionist. But so I mean, that's really I think the overarching thing that saves these novels from almost not being readable is if you read them as a whole, read all three of them, put it together as like one story that really has some social conscious meaning to them, especially in the 60s, race riots and things, you know, like that. I think it's very, very important and very interesting. So that's my review of Ursula K. Lequin's the first three novels in her Hanish novel series. I know I'm being long-winded, but we had to do a lot of update for Sci-Fi September. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you found any entertaining value, please like, subscribe, and give me comments. Totally tell me what you think of those three novels if you've read them, because like I said, individually, no, I wouldn't suggest reading them, but as a whole, yeah, I think you really should. All right, guys, I'm gonna stop now. Thank you very much. Peace out.